Welcome to Deal Talk. I'm Jeffrey Veit. Let's talk about buying or leasing a car, truck, motorcycle, boat, motorhome, and find some ways to save you some money and avoid the tricks of the trade. That's what we try to do every week here, and we're pretty good at it, I think. I read an article in the March edition of Consumer Report this week I thought was interesting. The point was to make a list of owner satisfaction by brand. That's what they had in there. I don't know how you could get an exact bearing on it from that article, right? It has the most loved and least loved by categories like enjoyment and comfort and ownership and infotainment and cabin storage. Then they have 28 names, of manufacturers, brands, on a long list, which they rate by points, starting at, obviously, number one's got the most points and all the way down to 28. No categories like price, resale value, repair record, warranty, none of those in this article. It's just crazy. Obviously, kind of a fluffy list, kind of a little bit more laid back type thing. I bring it up because you can use the list of 28 and realize that if you use stick to the top half of the list, you're better off than the bottom half of the list. That's about as much accuracy as you're going to get out of it. It's, and I think I know a lot about the quality in terms of brand based on my years in the business and how I keep up with the industry. And this guy has written stuff before, and he doesn't agree with the rest of Consumer Reports articles. It's funny how they can have one month they can have an article that gives you this list, and then 6 months later the list will give you, it'll give you a different list, and I think just a matter of opinion. It's the yearly one that really matters. But this was pretty cool because you could stick in the top half, and you'll be getting the same information you get from the podcast in terms of quality, right? Splitting it in half is pretty good. That's the important part, right? With the exception of EVs, which I highly recommend you avoid no matter what they tell you. I don't care what they tell you in any magazine. Don't buy an electric vehicle. Don't buy one. I'm telling you, I go over it every week. I've given you a million reasons why you shouldn't. There's no positive thing from it. Now, if you're rich, like many of the people are, and you buy one because it looks good to have it in your driveway, okay, fine. If you don't, it's like going to the ball game. When the ball game's over, the money's gone, And nobody's going to drive that electric car that much anyway. And so that's kind of what happened. Before we go to this week's subject, let's briefly talk about tires and wheels. This is something I've noticed a lot on the net lately, some conversation. I thought I should bring it up and talk about it from my perspective. There are a lot of good tire companies, right? But some are just consistently better, like Michelin. Michelin is consistently better than the rest. And I don't care what test you go through, they're always at the top. First or second. In every category, though. So it's like they are definitely the best tire. But there are other good ones. Goodyear's a good tire. There's other good ones. But Michelin's definitely the top of the heap. And often you can get them on a new vehicle if you request it. So if you order a vehicle, you could probably get Michelin's from a lot of companies. Or you can get the people at the dealership to maybe swap them out for you. I don't know, something worth looking into. I know that in all the leases that I've had over the years, the tires hold up way better for Michelin in terms of mileage than any that I've had. One of the options and attractive points can be tire size, right? They have all those new tires, low profile, 19 and 21 inch, and 20 inch and 22 inch, and the wheels are available, and they're really low profile, so the tire looks really skinny between the wheel and the road. Low profile beauties. But be aware, those large tire and wheels cost more to replace, number one, and don't hold up nearly as well. They don't. You can check any article you want. They have a shorter sidewall and a low profile so that they, don't take bumps as well as the other ones and are more prone to harsher ride, and they damage easier, and there's a lot of reasons. I mean, they look cool, right? But unfortunately, and if you're going to be driving high speed on a racetrack, that low profile tires, wider and more low profile is probably good for, handling but not on the everyday road. You're not driving any race, and it's going to just cost you more money, and they don't ride as well, and they get damaged easier. If you can avoid them, stick to the higher sidewall basic sizes if possible. You'll save money now, and they won't, when you go to replace them later on, after you get 40,000 miles on them, 30,000 miles, you have to replace them. They'll cost you less chance of the wheel being damaged. There's all these positive things about it. So I recommend that's what you go with. If you like the podcast, take a couple of minutes and do a review on whatever podcast source you use to get this podcast. If you've already done a review, thank you so much. If you want to be a great friend or relative, tell everybody you know about Deal Talk and help them save money, possibly big money, by the way. And you'll be the hero. They don't thank me after that. They thank the person that told them about it. Listeners who'd like some sort of written material to carry with you when you're shopping, then get a copy of Informed Buyer from Amazon Kindle or Barnes & Noble Nook. Download it to your phone or your tablet or whatever, and you'll get good information. And it only costs you $3. Think about that. What can you buy nowadays for $3? You tell me. I don't know of too much you can buy for $3. Especially in the grocery store or at Starbucks, or I don't care where you go. Even ice cream cones are $3 now. You can buy this booklet and download your phone and have it with you for information that could save you thousands if you forgot something. How can it help you with $3? I don't know why everybody doesn't buy one. They should for $3, but anyway, you know about it, so that's as much as I can do is tell you about it. Well, upside down is the issue that we're going to discuss this week. In the past, we've talked about minus equity, also known as being underwater or upside down. The current market emphasizes this problem, so I think we should talk about it again. It's been over a year since we came up, and certainly that or longer since we thoroughly covered it. Right now, if you're upside down, you may have a better opportunity to recoup all or some of the minus equity because prices are way up. So if you bought a car 3 years ago, or a truck or a motorcycle, and you finance it a long time and you owe a lot more money than it's worth, now, in relation to that, you're going to be more in line because the market went up, the price went up, and what you owed didn't change. That was still in the marketplace. So this is a good time to recoup the possibilities of you being upside down, to get some of that money off your shoulders. But we also have to talk about how to prevent it from happening, because when you go to buy now, let's say you sold your vehicle and got some of your minus equity back out, now when you go buy something, you're going to have the same problem because the market's way up. Unless you can buy something from an individual or if you have another vehicle, it's a good, if you have the opportunity available to you to take advantage of it, now's a good time to get rid of that minus equity. But if you're just going to jump in from one frying pan into the fire, that's not going to do you any good. I mean, what is upside down? Why does it happen? What can you do about it if you are upside down, other than the market being a little higher right now? How can you prevent it from happening? That's even better yet, preventive maintenance, right? How do you stop from getting in a situation where you're going to be upside down? The basic definition is that, in a less critical term, when you owe more on your trade, on the vehicle that you have, than it's worth wholesale, is one situation. That's one position to be in, where you owe more on your vehicle than it's worth on a wholesale value. And then there's the extremely upside down, where you owe more on your vehicle than it's worth even if you sold it outright to a retail buyer. That's another level. What do you do about that? If you unfortunately have minus equity, the simplest form of that minus equity is when your payoff is more than the wholesale value, but less than the retail value. That's the best position to be in if you're going to be upside down. The why does it happen? There are a few different reasons for being in a minus equity. One reason for being upside down can be caused by financing with no down payment. Anytime you go in and finance the whole vehicle with no money down, you're going to be upside down because the vehicle doesn't get paid off fast enough to catch up with the depreciation. Now you're saying, well, you always tell us not to put anything down on a lease. That's right, because on a lease, you're not responsible for the ending value. That doesn't matter what's owed on it at the end of the term of the lease. You can walk away and tell them pound salt. See you later. That's one of the advantages to leasing. No exposure, no responsibility. other than the condition has to come back in a decent shape. That's it. And if you want to trade early in the loan period, let's say you take out a loan for 72 months, and you decide you want to trade in 40 months. Well, you're going to be upside down. It's not made, those two things aren't made to meet what you owe and what the vehicle's worth until, if it's a 72-month loan, it's kind of designed to meet maybe at 60 months to be in line. You're going to trade at 40 months, you're going to owe more than it's worth. Even with a marginal down payment, attempting to trade when you're early in the payment period leaves you upside down, even if you put a little money down. Because keep in mind, when you buy, you got to remember that, 7 or 8% is sales tax, then you got a dealer fee, and you got all these other fees and plates and all that stuff. So the first $3,000 or $4,000 you put down isn't going towards the vehicle anyway. It's going towards the extra stuff. When you buy a vehicle, it immediately depreciates the amount that they made. So that, at least that much, right? So if a dealer buys a vehicle for $28,000 and sells it to you for $30,000, it depreciates down to $28,000 when you leave, but actually it depreciates more than that because it can never be sold as new again. It's a used vehicle now, period, no matter what. You could, 3 days later, you could turn around and go back and say, okay, I don't want this vehicle, and sell it back to him, and it's got to be sold as a used vehicle. A dealer could try to sell it as new, but if he gets caught, that's serious stuff. It cost him his dealer's license. All those other fees that you get, they're gone. All that stuff's gone. That's MSRP or NAD retail on a used, plus tax and title and interest fees and all that stuff. Well, all that stuff adds up, right? A lot of times people buy a vehicle and they don't realize it, but they go out the door of the dealership and they're $5,000, $6,000 upside down. You've got the fees and the tax, and you've got the depreciation and the profit and all those things. They come to $5,000, $6,000 minus equity right then, right when they drive out. Right? I'll give you an example. Let's say they made $1,500 on the vehicle. There's $1,400 in taxes, $200 in tag, $800 in dealer fees. Right? Now, what's that come to? There's $4,000, almost $5,000. And if you buy gap insurance to help protect you, which is a good idea, if you're not putting any money down, you should always buy gap insurance. That money doesn't come back to you, but it does protect you if you have an insurance loss. Because insurance companies, keep in mind, they don't have to pay you what you owe. Has got nothing to do with what the insurance company pays. Nothing. Doesn't matter what you owe. You could owe nothing, and you could owe $10 million on a vehicle. The insurance company is going to pay you what the book price is if it's wrecked. That's it. That's all they're obligated to pay you. The fact is, the second you drive it off, you're upside down city. Another addition to the minus equity situation is, let's say you go in with a trade that you owed more than it was worth. You were upside down. And here you are upside down on your trade-in, trading to a vehicle without any money down, which is even more upside down. So you get like compounded upside downness. It's crazy, but that's what happens. And I've seen customers, I'm not making this up. In years, it's probably way worse right now than it was then. But years ago, I've seen customers who were $10,000 upside down. Yeah, $10,000. They owed $10,000 more than the vehicle's worth. Yeah, it's just the way it is. That's the marketplace. Because it's a vehicle, it depreciates. It's not like a home. That could happen with a home too, but not nearly the same. Not the same magnitude, and certainly not over the long term. A lease traded prior to the term is almost always upside down too. I mean, if you got a 3-year lease and you just decide at the end of 2 years that I don't want it anymore, well, you're going to owe 12 months of rent, which is upside down. Now, you may get the leasing company, you talk to them, explain your situation. If you've got some sort of hardship case, you could maybe get them to say, okay, well, we'll take it instead of 12 months, pay us 9 and we'll call it even. I've heard of that happening, but other than that, you'd have to pay those payments. But it's still, the worst that could happen is at the end of 2 years, you say, well, I'd like a different vehicle. Well, you have to go a whole another, 9 or 10 months before you could trade in the lease. Well, that's not so bad. Whereas if you finance it 72 months and at the end of 2 years want to trade it, you're going to be buried for 3 more years. Yeah, that's without coming up with big down payment. And if you had big down payment, you wouldn't have financed the whole thing to begin with if you're buying it. It's way worse on a long-term purchase than it is even on a lease. Way worse. You're paying off the vehicle at a slower rate. The longer you finance it, the slower the rate of payoff is, right? That's why the payments are less. And of course, the depreciation knows no boundary on time. Vehicles depreciate over time at the rate they depreciate. There's no change in that. That's the market. So if you're paying off at a slower rate, you're going to have more depreciation, and you're going to have a bigger difference when you go to trade it than if you're paying it off at a faster rate. Like, you don't see many people that finance a new car at 48 months that are upside down. Pretty, maybe for the first 6 months or a year, but after that, it's pretty close. That's about the rate at which it depreciates. Now, if you buy in a high prime market like we are now you've got additional depreciation. I've talked about that a lot of times. Right now, the market's 20%. It was 30 or 40%, but now it's about 20% over what it should be. So you're going to have that depreciation too, because the market will adjust and it will come back down. And it's already started to. And that's why I tell people to hang on and wait if they can. But when it does come down, it's going to change the value of that vehicle that you purchased if you bought it during the market. And there's nothing you can do about it. So you're upside down. That would have normally be, let's say, 3,000 upside down. You're going to be closer to 5,000 upside down because of the market change. There's not anything you can do about it. I mean, that's just the way it is. Other reasons that your vehicle has poor trade-in value, that's another one. You can have a vehicle, buy a vehicle that has bad reputation, right? Sure you can. Got a bad reputation, it hasn't held up well, and it's getting beat up by the marketplace. Well, that's going to hurt you too. That causes depreciation because the vehicle doesn't have the resale value it was open. The better the resale value, the lower amount of upside downness you have. So I'll give you an example. If you were to buy a new Honda and finance it 60 months and decided to trade in 30 months, you're going to be less upside down than you would be versus a new Ford or Chevy, just because of resale value. Got nothing to do with what they sold for. The percentage of depreciation is going to be less on the Honda than it is on those other two. It's all about percentages, right? And another one could be prior damage. Let's say you buy a vehicle and you have, finance it 60, 70, even 72 months. And 4 years from now, you decide you're going to trade it. And you know you were a little upside down. But if it was in a wreck and repainted, now you're way upside down. There's nothing. And unfortunately, insurance companies don't pay for that yet. But I see that coming in the future if the public, well, of course, if we can ever stick together on something and talk about it, the insurance company should be paying for that. Because when a vehicle's repainted, it kills the resale value. Let's face it, you're out buying a used vehicle, you find one that's been repainted, what do you think? Unless it's 10, 12 years old, if it's repainted and it's only 3 or 4 years old, you think, like everybody else thinks, it's been wrecked. Now, Carfax or AutoCheck will tell you a lot of that, but it doesn't catch everything. No, they don't. Especially if it's a rental or something. Rental companies a lot of them fix it, insure themselves, self-insured. They fix it, nobody ever knows the vehicle was wrecked. Never gets talked about on Carfax. Unfortunate, because that's what happens, though. That's why I never think about buying a rental. Never. Nope. Buying a lease turn-in is different than a rental. And you can ask and find out from a dealer. They're not going to tell you. They're going to call them all program cars. But if you want to know if it was a lease or a rental, you can find that out. In a lot of states, like Florida, the plate on the vehicle will tell you whether it's a rental or not. I believe it's Z plates for rentals. But to start with a Z. Even with a down payment, upside down's an issue. And right now, I thought we should talk about it because right now the upside down's crazy money. And there's nothing you can do about it because, if you were to buy today and then trade 3 months from now, that market adjustment wouldn't hit you much because it's still a high, crazy market. But the market's starting to come down. And when it gets back to reality, those who bought at 20% high and it gets down to normal, you still paid 20% too much. And it's down to normal. The only person that's going to eat that is you. Nope, they don't have to give the money back. Nope, the bank doesn't have to do anything about it. Nobody does. That is your responsibility. That's just the way it goes. And that's why I tell people if you can hold off as long as you can. In fact, last week's episode, I think it was a week before, talked about how to keep your vehicle, what to do, and when to not to trade it. And I've had episodes where I talked about exactly what to do to your vehicle, what things you can do to make it hold up longer, and know whether it's a good idea to keep it, right? Because if it's certain brands, like if you got an older Honda and you're trying to decide whether to keep it or buy a new one, it's not a good time to buy, you're still much better off with that Honda. They hold on a long time. It's like an old Mercedes diesel. I used to see a lot of Mercedes diesels. with 400 or 500,000 miles on them. No kidding. Yeah, those things, they last forever. If you take care of the body, they do. And on a Honda, everything goes for a long time. I mean, you still got to watch out for things like rust and stuff. And you got to have some care for your vehicle. You can't treat it like it's just a rental. You got to treat it like you care about it, and it'll hold up a long time, and you can go a lot longer than that. Getting a new vehicle is fun, but it's not the end of the world, right? Loans and leases are generally set up so that the value drops at about the same rate as what you owe. That way the bank doesn't get stuck, right? That's why they ask for down payment. You think they're asking for down payment because of my credit? No, they're asking for down payment in a lot of cases because they've projected what the resale is going to be, and they're trying to keep the loan in line with what you owe in case they had to repo it. They can get out of it, right? Depreciation is just one of those engines that just doesn't stop and it doesn't change. It's going to go depreciate at a certain rate, and that's the way it goes. To prevent it from happening, there are a number of things you can do. A down payment is one, right? That's one. But if you don't have a down payment, what do? Well, a shorter term. Financing in a short term. Let's say you get talking to the dealer and they come up with a couple of payment plans, and one's 48 months and one's 60 and one's 72 months. Well, the 72 months looks appealing because it's a low payment, but it's, pay me now or pay me later thing. You got to kind of just know what's good for you. 60 months might be your budget, but if you can handle the 48 months, if you can go, the shorter you can go and make the payment, that's what you should do. Absolutely. Every single time, that's what you should do. If you can handle the payment. That, obviously it boils down to budget, but how much can you make yourself handle? That would be the way to look at it. A company with a good resale record is what you want to stick with. That's important. For a used, a clean Carfax is important. Those things should tell you something about the future is going to be like in terms of upside down. Short-term lease is another way to get around it. Not long-term lease, short-term lease. 36 months or less. That's what I always talk about. The worst that can happen is you keep it 36 months. If you're buying it today, chances are it's going to meet your needs for 36 months anyway. There isn't going to be a lot of technology change in 36 months. And you're not responsible. You could still possibly make some money. You can still possibly buy it. In today's market, if I, rather than turn mine in, I bought mine because the market was way up and it was just a smart move. I couldn't get another lease for what I wanted. Remember, you're only responsible for the payment and not the end value. So at the end of the lease, let's say you leased one now, and then at the end of the lease, the market dropped down on it or whatever, it had been repainted, let's say. We talked about it, been in Iraq and got repainted. None of that's your responsibility. As long as it's fixed right, you can just turn it in and say, nope, thanks, see you later. Even if you have a bad Carfax, it's not a problem turning it in. That's not your responsibility. As long as you fix it right, it has to be fixed by a legitimate dealer. Sometimes if you terminate a lease, when there are a large number of payments left, the leasing company may, like I said earlier, they may have to give you a break, but they might not. You may have to pay the payments that are left. And obviously, if you want to trade in 24 months, it's better to only have 12 left than to have 30 left or something. They talk about in an article I was reading in Consumer Report, they were talking about how you have your choice of terms. No, you shouldn't even think about terms over 36 months with leasing. In your mind, that shouldn't even be an issue. You should never go over 36 months. That's where the full warranty goes to. That's when the best opportunity with the vehicle is. That's when there's every warranty covers everything up to that point. There's no reason that leasing wouldn't work for you at that. But when you get older, when you have them longer, 48 months or 60 months, things can happen. I always say don't. 36 months or don't lease. The big question is what to do if you're upside down, right? AKA underwater. Negative equity is the better term, right? What do you do? What's the key here is what do you do? A lot depends on how much you're upside down. Like I said before, there's two basic levels. You owe more than wholesale value of your trade-in, but less than what it could be sold for retail. In this case, you have a couple of choices. First of all, you could sell your vehicle retail by advertising it yourself and selling it in the paper, right? Or on Craigslist or whatever, or Shopper, or put it on all of them and sell it. You can look at the books online to see what it's worth on a retail value. Edmunds and Blue Book and NADA and see what it's worth and then sell it. Call used car dealers and ask them what they'll pay for it and then mark it up 20% and that's what you'd sell it for. And you could do that and when you're upside down, or when you're upside down just over the wholesale value, but you don't owe more than it's worth retail, a lot of times a dealer can make it look like you're getting what you owe, and the bank will go wrong with it in case you weren't able to sell it. So you still could trade. It's not going to be impossible because dealers are pretty resourceful, and they'll find a way to put that together as long as you're not buried beyond the retail value. Even then they could, but chances are they won't be able to if you're beyond the retail value. I mean, if you sell it yourself, that's great, but if not, you can do that. Especially if they have enough incentives to cover the minus equity, rebates and discounts and all that stuff to kind of cover up the minus equity, you can get beyond it. Now, you're going to be upside down more. Obviously, they're not going to take that money from the magic out of the thin air or off of a money tree. That's extra money you're going to owe on the one that you're purchasing. And you ought to know that right up front. Selling it outright would obviously be the best thing if you could. If you have poor credit, your only chance is a very creative dealer if you're upside down. If you owe more than it's worth wholesale, you do have a chance, though. You do have an opportunity. There are a lot of sharp dealers out there that could still arrange the financing. Or you can go, if you have good credit, you can go to the bank, and if they won't go along with the minus equity, you can just finance that separately on a separate loan if you wanted to. Often dealers will advertise that they'll pay off your trade no matter what you owe, making it sound as though they're going to allow you a trade-in value equal to or more than what you owe. That's not true. They're just going to arrange a bank to go along with it if they can. That particular terminology will give you whatever you owe on your vehicle. As the Attorney General says, in every state, that's a federal law, a federal rule, that they can't use that. They're not supposed to be using that. So if you got a dealer doing it, you got to remind them, oh, you're breaking the law. They won't give you more than your vehicle's worth. Nobody's going to do that. There's no charity foundations out there for car deals. Nope, they're not going to give you that, because if they may make it look like you're giving you more for your vehicle than you owe, but if you went in without a trade, you could get the amount difference off as a discount. So it's obviously not the way it works. They're just going to make it look that way. It really boils down to the bank. Any dealer will help you with, if possible, if you're upside down. They'll try to get you financed. They realize they don't make any money unless you buy something, so they're going to do their best, but it ultimately boils down to the bank and what they feel their risk is. There's no substitute for good credit. If you got good credit, you don't have to worry about this stuff. But if you don't have good credit, this all comes to pass. The second major category is if you owe more than the retail value of your vehicle. Your choices are a lot less then. First, and what I recommend, keep the vehicle until it's paid for or until you only have a few payments left. This is by far the best way, if you can make the vehicle work. If you have a vehicle that's worth $8,000 and you owe $10,000, keep it longer till it gets closer. What you owe and what it's worth is the same or even less. And you got a chance. Otherwise, you're just jumping from the frying pan into the fire. Don't do that. That's the first choice. If you can't wait, real needs that I suggest selling is retail is the best way to go, would be the second choice. So if you're in a situation where, you just can't wait, well, then you can sell it outright on a retail basis and get out of it that way, get the money out of it that you want it that way. But let's say you're over retail and the vehicle's broken and you can't sell it because people generally don't buy broken vehicles. If dealers take a broken vehicle in trade, they fix it and then they sell it because nobody wants to go through that. I mean, I can't blame people for that, right? So a lot of times what ends up happening in that situation is you have to go to the bank and tell them, look, my car's broke. I owe more than it's worth. I need to buy a vehicle. Can I have a separate loan for that difference? Or can I fix it and can I just buy one outright for finance 100% and get the new vehicle and then work on the one that's broken over a week or two? You can work on selling it and fixing it up and stuff. I mean, it's all, there's no real answers that when you're over the retail value, there's no really correct answer. Selling it outright is a great thing. Keeping it is a great thing. But if it's broken, then you're in a little bit of a ditch then. No question about it. So you got to find a way to either get it fixed and keep it or buy a new vehicle, financing the whole thing, and then fix it over the next week or two so you're not making double payment. But it gives you time to arrange for fixing it and get enough out of it to cover what you owe, and you might have a second, payment for the repairs still on your credit. I mean, there's no simple way around this. If you can't wait because the real needs, like I said, selling at retail is definitely the way to go, no question about it. Regardless of the situation, it's always good to talk with the bank about your problem, and at the same time, find out your exact payoff amount. When you talk to the bank, you can tell them, look, I'm going out to trade. According to my research, I owe $10,000 and my vehicle is only worth 7 or 8. What can I do about that? Shop some of the car lots with your vehicle, like CarMax and stuff, and see what they'll pay for it. That'll give you a good idea of where you are in terms of wholesale. So if they offer you, they're going to offer you, when they go to buy your vehicle, what they're offering you is wholesale. How much do you owe over the wholesale value? If you're 20 or 30% of the wholesale value, that's over retail. So you know you're in a little deeper hole. If you owe maybe $1,000 or $1,500 more than they're offering you, there's ways of working that out. You can sell it outright. You can finance it in. There's things you can do, or you can keep it for another year if you could, right? But you take those wholesale values and you add 20% to them, and that's the retail value. Comparing your closeout to the wholesale and the retail numbers will give you a great idea of how critical your situation is. Could be bad, and it's going to be worse if you buy now. It's already going to be worse. So even if you owed less than it was worth, or retail, if you buy one now, you're going to owe more than it's worth retail if you want to trade in the same situation, because the market's going to come back down. I believe that, no question about it. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind at all the market's going to readjust. That's why I said in this market, it's an opportunity for people that are already upside down to recover that by selling it outright if they had another vehicle to use, or if they can find something used from an individual so that they're not jumping from one upside down to another upside down. No matter where you were before, the difference between the value of your trade, both wholesale and retail, is a smaller difference now if you bought it before because of the market going up. If you sell your vehicle to a dealer, you'll be in much better shape. I can't tell you what to do about not having anything to drive at that point, but you can be out of your hole at that point. You could also buy a cheap vehicle off an individual to tide you over until the market changes back in maybe a year or two, and you could take that vehicle and buy it on a separate loan, and have sold yours outright to a dealer to get rid of the minus equity and just buy something cheap and finance it, or get along with one vehicle, or take the bus system. I mean, there's a lot of things you can do if you sit down and really work on it, if you want to go through the trouble of doing it. That's it. I mean, if you can keep your vehicle, let's say you're upside down, but it still fits your needs, it still runs good, there's nothing seriously wrong with it. If you can keep it till it's paid for, that's always the best way. No question about it. That is the best way to go. And that's why it's so important, and I talk about on the show, the fact that you have to go out and look for a vehicle without talking price, so nothing distracts you from getting the right vehicle. Because if you have the right vehicle, you can end up keeping it a long time and it doesn't bother you. I mean, it's still doing the job. I mean, if you're trading because you need a different size car or truck, well, I mean, that's one thing. Then maybe that you got to find some way around it, like we just talked about. But if it still fits your needs, why not live? When you were buying it, hopefully you knew what you were getting into. But even if you didn't, now you do, and you can keep it till the end or as close to the end. Remember, you only got to be within 6 months of the end of the loan, and before you're definitely in shape, maybe a year. But it's a good time if you're going to get out of your minus equity. I mean, how do I prevent upside down? In most cases, you can't. Because if you buy now, by the time you want to trade, the market will have returned to normal. So a few $1,000s of your trade-in value will be gone, but closeout will be the same. So there's nothing you can do about it right now. If you're going to buy now, you're going to be upside down later. If compared to what you paid. Now, if it's paid for, you're paying cash for, it doesn't matter. You're just going to take a lump. You won't get any back. But I look at it still as being upside down, and it's still a loss to you. So first and foremost, by getting a great deal on a vehicle you buy will stop you from being upside down in the future. Getting a great deal. Tough to do right now. Maybe buying from an individual on a used vehicle, but on a new vehicle is tough. Got to give it a little more time here. Make a down payment of 20%. That'll help you from being upside down in the future. Right now, it would just break you even when you went to trade because you're already 20% over on the market. Finance as short-term as you possibly can handle. Don't look for the most convenient payment. Look for the one that's the shortest that you can afford to make, that you could do. Even if you have to scrimp a little bit, it's worth it. Do it. Shop thoroughly before you buy to make sure the vehicle works. Can't stress that enough. Test drive everything. Have the family with you. Look things over really well. Don't talk price while you're looking at vehicles. Make sure you're buying something that's going to work long term. And that eliminates a lot of the minus equity stuff because you never end up trading it. If your down payment is small or your trade-in has a closeout and doesn't show any equity, be sure and buy gap insurance. On a lease, it comes automatically, but on a buy, it doesn't. You have to pay for it. Get the gap insurance. That will help you if you have a loss. They end up paying everything that you owe if it's a loss on the vehicle, as opposed to paying what the market says. If your down payment is low and you need a super low payment and you finance for a long term, know right up front that that's it for you for a vehicle. Don't kick yourself in the tail later on saying, oh, darn, I should have thought. No, you know it right now. If you're going to finance, if you need the lowest term payment, you're going to finance long term, and you know this market, and you know financing long term make you upside down, just plan on keeping it for the term you finance. If the dealer's going to talk to you about 72 months, okay, you talk to your spouse or your family and say, look, can we keep this vehicle 66 months? Without any doubt, I would put you 6 months ahead of the payoff. Or even a year, you could say 60 months. Because for 60 months, you won't be able to do anything. You got to make sure that everybody agrees that'll work, and then you're okay. That's how you, as long as you know coming into it, right? Now, you may have to, if the payment's too much, you may have to drop back to a less expensive vehicle. Simple as that. Just be sure it's sensible. The vehicle's sensible. You're not making a mistake and going to run out of room, or you're buying the wrong vehicle that doesn't fit your needs. Keep it as simple as you can, but still get your needs. If you can look at a short-term lease of your vehicles, never more than 36 months, it's a good idea to take a look at that. Never, ever. If you want to change vehicles, the worst that can happen is you have the vehicle for 36 months or 34 or 33 months, in that range. That's the worst that can happen. Hard to fall out of love with the vehicle in 34 months. They're still almost new. No upside down, no resale issues, no minus equity because of the price gouging going on. You might not be able to do a lease right now without a large down payment because leasing companies only finance MSRP, and a lot of dealers are selling their vehicles for over MSRP. They just don't do a capitalized cost of more than MSRP plus some options. You could buy some options and put it in there, but like if if you bought a vehicle without a sunroof in it, you put a sunroof in it, they would cover that, I'm sure. Minus equity, aka underwater, upside down, is a pain, but like I've explained, there are a few things you can do, and I think about this. In the current market, you have an opportunity to get out from under your problem, but that's about it. There's no other advantages to it. And what causes upside down, you know what it is. You just got to bite the bullet and hold yourself to it. Otherwise, it's like a lot of things we do in life where we eat that extra cheeseburger thinking, we'll worry about it later. Well, just knowing it's no worrying about it later when it comes upside down. It is what it is, and it's whatever you made it into when you bought to begin with. You have all the information now, and you know what you got to do to keep the resale value in line with what you owe, and it's not a good time to buy. It's a bad time to buy. Some people have to. If you have to, you have to. You got to make sure you meet the terms. But if you don't have to, try not to, because it's just not a good time to buy a vehicle. Well, that's Deal Talk for this week. If you have a question, a request, or even a comment, please call, text, email me. Callers, it's 407-801-4071. That's 407-801-4071. You'll probably get a voicemail at that point, but you will get called back very quickly. For email, it's dealtalk@mail.com. Dealtalk@mail.com. Please don't forget to do a review and do yourself a favor by getting a copy of The Informed Buyer from Amazon or Nook. Will you? It's $3. Think about that. What else did you buy today for $3? Not much. Want to be a hero? Tell your friends and family about Deal Talk, and you'll be a hero when they save. Guaranteed. However I can help you, contact me and you'll hear from me. And remember, every payment you get should be CPI. Complete payment information. Every time they quote your payment, you make sure Then on that same piece of paper, they put down the amount you're financing, the number of months they figured it for, the interest rate they used, any required down payment to get to that amount financed. It has to be included with that payment. If it's a lease, you want allowable miles per year included too. Yep. And if you're buying, you want every single cost involved in the payment they give you. Don't tell you the price is $20,000 plus fees or $20,000 plus the extra stuff. No. What's the total figure? What is the price of the vehicle, including the tax, the tag, any aftermarket options, anything that's required, all totaled together? I want to know the OTD out the door.